Transform these basic materials into charming cake stands and an assortment of sweet treats. The first thing I did was I cut some circles and glued layers together until they were a thickness of a 1/16 of an inch. I have 3 sizes, 1 inch, 7/8, and 5/8. I also cut a cake pop stick into 3 lengths, 5/8, 1/2 inch, and 3/8. I cut some 11-inch strips of paper at 1/16 of an inch wide and 1/8 of an inch wide. I glued 2 1/8-inch wide strips together to form one long one. For each cake pop stick, I rolled that long strip onto the end. I cut one of the 1/16 of an inch wide strips in half. Then I rolled it a little above the previous one. This strip is really just decorative. Here's how all 3 look up to this point. Here I'm using a quilling tool to shape it. If you don't have one, you can always use a measuring spoon too. It just won't be as deep. Also, a large ball stylus will work. If you don't have a circle template, before shaping the base, trace it onto cardstock. If you do have it, find the circle that matches it the best, and then trace it and cut it out. I applied glue to the inside of the base, and I made sure to let it dry thoroughly first. And then I glued a 2-layer circle to the bottom of the base. You could really stop here at this point, but I'm going to try something new to try to disguise the rolled paper look. I add a little bit of water to my air dry clay and applied it all over the base and the decorative area. And then I'm going to let it dry overnight. I made this round sanding tool from a broken paintbrush and glued some sandpaper onto it. It works great in small curved areas. I just sanded the base until it looked and felt smooth. Here is how all of my bases look after sanding them. You can't see the rolled paper lines at all. Now it's time to attach the bases to the top of the cake stand. You can eyeball this part if you like. I'm terrible with that, so I marked my center. I'm using Elmer's glue all to attach the bases. I had planned to use my decorative edge scissors for this part, but I couldn't find them anywhere. I'm hoping I didn't get rid of them when I was downsizing. So I drew out a scallop edge instead and cut it out myself. Right before I glue it in place, I gave it a quick mist of some water to help it curve easier while I'm gluing. I'm using Elmer's glue all again, but if you want it to grab quicker, use Aleene's Fast Grab. I glued it all the way around and trimmed it off next to where I started. My scallops didn't end perfectly at the end, but that doesn't really matter. Now they're ready to be painted. I did base coat them with Mod Podge first before painting, and I decided to go with antique parchment. And then after I gave them a couple of coats of paint, I painted them with some diamond glaze to make them look like they were ceramic. To get started making some sweet treats, I need to first peel off the paper from both sides of this piece of foam board. If I go slow, I can usually pull it all off without too much difficulty. If it does give me a hard time, I have lightly misted with water and let sit for a few minutes in the past. This is my first time using foam board to create little desserts. If it works, this will be a wonderful way to use up those small scrap pieces of foam board that I usually have floating around. I'm tracing large circles that will be perfect for layered cakes. I'm just tracing them out with my tweezers. I could probably use a toothpick or some other kind of a sharp object. I just didn't want to leave any pencil or ink lines on the foam. Then I cut them out. The foam is very soft with the paper removed, so I had to be careful not to crush them. I sanded the edge just a little to soften it, and I curved the top edge to look more like a cake. Poking this toothpick on the edge helps it to have a cake texture. I also used a sewing needle as well. I'm sanding off some of the foam that's standing up after poking it with the toothpick and the needle. You probably can't tell very well, but at this point it's really starting to look like cake. This little strip of foam board, I'm going to try and make some little pinafores. So I'm trying to cut all of the pieces the same size if possible. Using a needle again, I am creating the cake texture on the sides. It's not as tedious though as it looks. Now I think I'm going to cut out some little circles that will become little tarts or pastry cups. I'm not really sure what to call them. I just know they always look yummy. A lot of these desserts probably don't even really exist. I'm just kind of making it up as I go. I'm using a toothpick to press little indentions all around the outside of the circle. Here's how it looks after I finished. Using the end of a paintbrush or a small stylus, I'm creating an indentation in the center that can hold some type of filling or topping. See how it created like a little dessert cup? I traced out more circles. These are a little smaller than the previous ones. They're going to be cookies. I did roll my brayer over them. You can see they will be the perfect thickness for cookies. After I cut them out, I scratched the surface with a needle to give them some texture. Now it's time to bring them to life. This is the fun part. And now I'm just using some acrylic paints to color my cakes and other treats. For the chocolate chips, I used some brown paint. Also, I didn't do it, but you could paint some blueberries or swirls onto them too. Next, I'm using some chalk pastels to give even more detail. Uh-oh, it looks like I overbaked my chocolate chip cookies just a little too much, at least for me. I love how the pastry shells turned out. I shaped off some blue and reddish pastels and mixed with some Mod Podge to create a sugary sweet sauce or a filling. I think my blue was just a little bit off. I should have made it a little bit lighter. Sometimes it's hard to tell when they are wet how they will look when they're dry. I filled the pastry shells with some of the blueberry and the strawberry filling. To make the sprinkles, I colored small pieces of air dry clay with chalk pastels, or you could use paint, and rolled into some little slender snakes. And when they were dry, I cut the pieces off and mixed them all together. I created chopped nuts and chocolate sprinkles the very same way. I'm using a baggie to create a frosting bag. I cut a small square and rolled it into a funnel shape. I taped it to hold it in place. I watered down some air dry clay. Don't add too much water or it won't hold its fluffy shape very well. Then I filled the frosting bag. I made sure to smush it all the way to the very tip. I folded the top of the bag over to keep the frosting from coming out when I squeezed it. I put a thick layer of frosting between each layer of my cake. I decided not to frost the sides. I frosted the top of my cake and then added some blueberries that I had made. The blueberries are made of colored air dry clay and rolled into little balls with an indentation on the side. I filled a couple of the pastry shells with the frosting and then I topped with chunks of chocolate. I really wanted them to look like chopped nuts, but they ended up looking like chocolate. The petit fours are topped with frosting and a strawberry or a raspberry looking berry on top. They were made just like the blueberries. This time I made some white drizzle, just like I made the blueberry sauce. I was using a needle to try and drag a thin line of the drizzle across the top of the dessert, but it turned out looking thicker than I really wanted. They still look yummy and remind me a lot of cheese Danish. I'm giving them all a thin coat of diamond glaze to finish them off. I think it makes them look even more realistic. I really love the way the petit fours turned out. I need to make more in different flavors. I made these to look like big oatmeal sandwich cookies. Here are some flaky pastry squares that are drizzled with some chocolate. I cut out some paper doilies to better display these delicious little treats. You would never guess that they were all made from scrap foam board. Some of them look so good I want to pop them into my mouth. It was so much fun getting lost in my imagination and just dreaming up all of these little sweet treats. And there's so many more that I still want to make. I want to give a big thank you to all my longtime viewers and all of my new viewers for watching. Now go and have some fun dreaming up treats for your tiny world. See you next time.